Hey guys, it's Christine, also known as IvyWinter. Thank you for joining me for another Disney video. Today we're going to be talking about 5 things that I think you need to think of when planning a Disney trip. And this is whether you're brand new to going to Disney World, you've been there a few times. These are still, I think, the very first things you need to think about and consider before planning your trip to Disney World. And it will make everything so much smoother and make the rest of your decisions easier if you can kind of answer these 5 questions or details before you start planning. So let's just jump right into it. Number 1 is going to be time of year. You need to ask yourself, what time of year are you going to Disney World? If you have flexibility, you can go a lot of different times of year. In my situation, I don't have kids, I freelance, I can kind of work my schedule around it. I think of it as, when do I want to go in terms of crowds and maybe in terms of events. So in the early part of the year, January, they have Festival of the Arts at Epcot. They also have some of their marathons, which can bring in more crowds. You've got things like Martin Luther King Day and President's Day in January, February, so that can bring in more crowds. Spring, you've got Flower and Garden Festival, some more marathon run. Summer is just general crowded time because kids are off from school. In fall, you've got Food and Wine and Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party, which brings in a lot of people. Fall has become a new favorite. October used to be a quiet time, no more. So that is something to consider. And then of course you have the holidays. There are some down days between like Halloween and Thanksgiving and like the first week of December. But for the most part, you're gonna find really busy crowds for Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's. But of course, maybe you want to go during a holiday or 4th of July or something like that. If you're less flexible and you're not thinking just about events, then I think you're thinking of when do I have time to go. Maybe you have kids, you can only go in the summer or during spring or fall break. So that's going to limit you, and you need to decide, do you want to go for specific events in the fall? Would you rather handle the heat in the summer? Maybe it doesn't bother you. Figuring out generally what time of year you want to go is going to set off the rest of your trip planning. And I don't think there is a right or wrong time. I think there used to be a few years ago. It was really cut and dry of like, these were quiet times to go, these are not quiet times to go, these are the best events. Now I feel like Disney has events all year round, and they keep adding to that. They also don't really have quiet times anymore. I went last January and found some really crazy days towards the end of January, not around the holidays or anything, just random days in January that were pretty much packed. So I firmly believe that there is no such thing as slow season anymore, so don't let that be too much of a factor in what you choose. Make sure you choose what works best for your schedule and what makes the most sense for your family or your group going. Once you figure out when you're gonna go, you have to think of how many days you're going to go. I always recommend, if you are new or have only been to Disney a couple of times, the minimum 5 days, and I think that even is a little hard to pull off if you don't know the parks very well or you don't go very often, because there are 4 parks and a lot to do outside of that, and it can be a bit overwhelming. And when you add in your travel time, 5 days is not as much as you think it is. But that is generally my advice for a minimum. But you have to decide what's going to work for you. Maybe it's only a 3-day weekend. Maybe you can stay 8 days, which would be great. To me, the more days the better, because you get to slow down and get to see everything you want to see and take it at a slow pace. But again, this is going to be based on your schedule, so that's the next thing that you need to decide. How many days am I going to go? And within that, you'll start thinking about how many days do I give to each park, right? And I think that's one of the biggest questions that people have, even those who go all the time. The answer to that is changing, because it's changing based on what is offered at each park and how much you can do and how much you feel it's worth it. And maybe I feel like Animal Kingdom is worth my time more than Rob does because he doesn't really like it. And so you need to decide on interest as well as how much there actually is in each park to decide what days, what parks. So that is something that is going to come out of your how many days am I going. Again, I think that 5 days is usually pretty good because you can at least dedicate, a full day Magic Kingdom, maybe a full day Epcot, depending on your interest there, because again, Epcot doesn't have a lot of rides, it has a lot of atmosphere, a lot of the World Showcase area. I like to spend time in. It might not be for everyone. Then number 3, I think the next question you need to ask yourself is, am I staying on site or am I staying off site? Am I gonna stay on property at a Disney hotel, or am I going to stay just off property and maybe save some money but have to handle my own transportation, right? Those are kind of the pros and cons of both. And I'd like to do more in-depth about that in a video, but kind of surface level is, if you're staying on property, generally you're going to be paying more money than what you're going to find on the off-property resorts, but you're going to have free transportation. This includes buses. For some resorts, this is boats and monorails to the various parks. You're going to get the perk of being able to take Magical Express to your resort rather than taking a cab from the airport. That can be a really big plus for a lot of people. It is for me, because that's kind of a pricey cab ride. You're going to have the benefit of early check-in and being able to check in online and then walk into your room and just let yourself in without going to the lobby. Like, there's a lot of perks for staying on site. You also get fast pass options 60 days ahead instead of 30 days ahead. For some people, these are all worth the cost of staying on site. Another cost you need to think about, aside from the room being a bit more expensive, is now there are parking fees every single day at the resorts. That does add up if you have your own car, so that is something to think about as well. Staying off-site might mean saving quite a bit of money. I've looked at some of those prices and it's very different. It also means probably needing a car or being able to pony up for cabs as needed. Some have shuttles to and from the airport. They usually cost something, like maybe $15, which is still gonna like save you, I don't know, a good, I would say $40 rather than taking an Uber, which is great. But most of them don't have any sort of transportation to the parks. You're going to either be taking a cab, driving your own car, and paying parking, or if you're maybe near Disney Springs, because there are a lot of off-property or not Disney hotels near Disney Springs, a lot of people will pick up one of those hotels, walk 5 or 10 minutes to Disney Springs, and take a bus from there. Also an option and something to think about when you're thinking about where your offsite hotel is. But really, that is your next decision. Where am I staying, and is it on property or off property? Before you even think about what hotel specifically, you need to make that decision. Then your 4th decision, now you're buying tickets, right? You figured out your time of year, how many days, you're probably booking your flights already because you figured out your days. You are staying on site, let's say. And now you need to figure out park hopper ticket or no park hopper ticket. I'm always a person who is pro park hopper, but that is because I am very gung-ho when I go to Disney. I like to park hop almost every single day that I'm there. I like to split up my days. I enjoy going from one park to another a lot more than necessarily spending an entire day at a park, where I feel like I get a little worn out at that point. But everyone's different. Some people like non-park hoppers because it saves them a bit of money. Maybe you're going around with kids and it makes more sense to just do one park on one day because hopping is a lot. Maybe you just like to check off your parks that way. You like to just say, like, okay, Magic Kingdom Day, Epcot Day, Animal Kingdom Day, you know, just everything is one day. And I totally understand if that makes planning easier, because sometimes park hopping makes things more complicated. Where am I having breakfast and where am I having dinner in 2 different, you know, places? How am I doing my fast passes if I'm switching parks? So I can understand the complexity of park hopping, and I can understand wanting to save some money by doing non-park hopping tickets. So that is your next decision. Do you want to park hop? Meaning, do you want to go to more than one park in a single day? Or do you want to go to one park a day? This kind of might lead back to how many days you're staying, because if it's 3 or 4, you might want to park hop just to get as much done in that short amount of time as possible. If you're staying a whole week, maybe a park hopper is not needed, because you can just gradually go to one park every single day and be fine. Then my number 5 last question you need to ask yourself when planning is, are you going off-site to other places? Are you going to Universal for a day or 2? Are you going to Gatorland or Legoland? And then the question that spawns off of that is, are you getting a car or not? Are you going to cab it, which is what I normally do when I go to Universal? Are you going to get a car? Will it be more cost effective with the number of people in your group to have a car. So that's the next question you want to ask yourself is, what are your plans outside of Disney? And if you're doing more than just Disney, how are you getting around? And how many days are you going to give to each of those things? Is Universal 1 day, 2 days? Are you switching hotels? You're going to stay at Disney for a few days and then Universal for a few days? That's kind of your last major thing you should think about, because that's going to affect your budget and make you think more about transportation, because you cannot get free transportation from Disney to Universal. Why would they do that? They don't want you going there. So you need to figure out how you're gonna get around. So those are what I think are the 5 like absolute top questions you need to ask yourself before we even get into reservations, before we even get into fast passes. Those are the 5 that you should hit first. And I think sometimes planning a Disney trip is overwhelming, but if you think of those 5 questions first and you kind of answer all of those, everything else is going to fall into place. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it helps with planning. If you have something that you always consider first and foremost when deciding a trip, you can let me know in the comments below. If you have a specific time of year you like to go, or so many days that you like to go that you recommend, you can also put those in the comments below. It's always helpful for people who are landing here to learn more about Disney World, to see other people's opinions on these things. If you like this video, then like it. If you like me, you should subscribe, because I make videos every single week. I hope you guys have a great rest of the week and a great Thanksgiving. That's coming up soon. Crazy that we're in holiday season. As always, thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of the day. Bye.